Bah, humbug. It's probably the only time of the year that we ever hear that word. And you probably also thought that, of course, at some point I'm going to be reviewing one of the versions of A Christmas Carol, and I'll be doing several of them. Tonight I'm doing the 1951 version starring Alastair Sim. And if you have seen the David Lane films, Great Expectations or Oliver Twist, I feel like this version of A Christmas Carol, they're all Charles Dickens books. I think it perfectly falls in with the style of David Lane's films, which I'm a huge sucker for those movies, Oliver Twist and Great Expectations. And this was actually my first time to see this version of A Christmas Carol. It's usually regarded as the best version of A Christmas Carol, and I can totally see why. I haven't seen them all, but this one is by far my favorite that I've seen so far. So, A Christmas Carol, I would say the theme of it is that it's never too late to change your ways. Of course, Ebenezer Scrooge, the word Scrooge itself has come to be known as a negative word. Don't be a Scrooge, meaning don't be a party pooper, don't be the guy that is just rude and cold to everybody. But so you can change your ways. That's what I really love about the film, and what better time to change your ways than at Christmas time, right? So if my previous review of The Bishop's Wife didn't get you in the Christmas spirit, this film certainly should do the trick. But so to start off, I want to read a quote about humbug that I actually found on imdb.com, which was just perfect. The word humbug is misunderstood by many people, which is a pity since the word provides a key insight into Scrooge's hatred of Christmas. The word humbug describes deceitful efforts to fool people by pretending to a fake loftiness or false sincerity. So when Scrooge calls Christmas a humbug, he's claiming that people only pretend to charity and kindness in a scoundrel effort to delude him, each other, and themselves. In Scrooge's eyes, he is the one man honest enough to admit that no one really cares about anyone else. So for him, even every wish for a Merry Christmas is one more deceitful effort to fool him and take advantage of him. This is a man who has turned to profit because he honestly believes everyone else will someday betray him or abandon him the moment he trusts them. So I never thought that humbug was such a deep word. Usually I just thought it was some random gibberish word that only Scrooge said, because like I said, this is the only time of the year that I ever hear the word humbug. But so the plot, of course, is Scrooge is a wealthy man. He has a man, Bob Cratchit, that works for him, and Bob Cratchit has a wonderful family. Tiny Tim is in his family, the crippled boy who has to use a crutch to get around. And Scrooge hates Christmas time. He thinks everybody should always be working. So he is a very greedy man, of course. And he goes home. It's Christmas Eve, and he's visited by his deceased business partner, Jacob Marley. And Jacob Marley says he's in chains and says he's in agony after death for all his sins that he committed when he was alive with Ebenezer Scrooge. And he tells him, you must change your ways. You're going to be visited by 3 spirits, 3 ghosts tonight. The ghost of Christmas past, ghost of Christmas present, and ghost of Christmas yet to come. So that's the plot. Most people know the plot already. And my personal favorite is the ghost of Christmas present. But starting with the ghost of Christmas past in this movie in particular, I like what they did with the special effects, showing that it showed that he was, like, you can see his physical features, but of course he has that very ghost look to him. And they did this with Jacob Marley too, his old business partner, when he's in chains, and it gives that really nice ghost look to it. And when the ghost of Christmas present comes, actually with the Ghost of Christmas Past, I do want to note that we learn quite a bit about the background of Ebenezer Scrooge in this version in particular. For example, in this version, the movie goes a little step ahead of the book because the book doesn't talk about any of this. The movie says that Scrooge's mom died while she was giving birth to Ebenezer. So this is tragic. And since his mother died giving birth to him, his father ended up hating him. And then we also go on to learn that Scrooge's sister died giving birth to Scrooge's nephew. So it's like this circle of hatred because Scrooge, of course, hates his nephew. And we see this at the start of the film that he is just really cold and mean to his nephew. So we get quite a bit of background information about Scrooge in this version, which is interesting. The Ghost of Christmas Present is when my favorite scene happens. It's when we see when Scrooge goes to Bob Cratchit's home and he sees Cratchit, his life after working with Scrooge. And it's like, I like it because, you know, we all have our own little lives at work, but at the end of the day, we have a completely different life when we go home. And our bosses or coworkers may not even think about that life. So here, Scrooge, the boss of Bob Cratchit, he sees his employee's life when he's at home, and he sees little tiny Tim, and he realizes, man, I'm not that nice of a guy. I should be nicer to Bob Cratchit. He has this big, lovely family. And this, of course, is when we hear little tiny Tim say the famous quote, "God bless us, every one of us." It's just a really lovely scene. And then, of course, we have the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. And this is actually my biggest flaw with the movie is how the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come looks. See, of course, in a lot of versions that I see, the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come is supposed to be this skeleton in a black robe, kind of that Grim Reaper look to it. But in this version, it's a normal man in a black robe. We even see, like, I'm wearing a robe now, we see a human hand come out of the robe, which completely takes away the scariness of it. So I was super bummed that with the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, they could have made him a lot scarier and spookier, but that's just a tiny little flaw. I got over it. When Scrooge wakes up from all the ghost visits, this is when we really see actor Sims' energy just go nuts. Everybody thinks he's a madman because, of course, he's a changed man. He's super nice, but I loved his acting. I loved Alastair Sims' acting. He just has so much energy. He's as giddy as a schoolboy, just hopping around, giggling, and it's just really fun to watch. I thought that he was such a great Scrooge. I think he's definitely the best Ebenezer Scrooge that I've seen in a film, because, you know, you don't like him at the start of the movie because he's a rude guy, but as the movie progresses, you start liking him more and more, as it should be with A Christmas Carol. I like the guy, I like the guy at the end. And of course the end is when Tiny Tim, he is no longer a cripple, and he runs up to Scrooge, and Scrooge picks him up, and just that happy moment, that happy Christmas moment. And the narrator comes on, and God bless us, every one of us. The movie itself, it was not a box office success in America. It was titled A Christmas Carol, and in England it was titled Scrooge. But however, in Britain, it was a huge success. It was one of the most popular films in Britain in 1952. And of course, I'm raving about how great this movie is. It's certainly a Christmas classic. I'm going to start watching it every Christmas because it got me in the Christmas spirit, My next Scrooge review is actually going to be the 1935 version. I actually already watched it. Wasn't too much of a fan, but I'll talk more about that in that review. Until then, bah humbug.